Hi there, and welcome to the Surviving and Thriving in Residency podcast. I'm Charley Lowry, your host and director of GME Relations at PracticeLink. This show is all about exploring the world of graduate and undergraduate medical education. We'll dive into the real-life experiences, successes, and challenges faced by medical students, residents, and fellows, while also highlighting valuable tools to support you, whether that's financial planning, student aid, or the many free resources provided by PracticeLink. If you're thinking about med school, currently studying, or deep into residency or fellowship, this podcast is here to offer insights and support to make your journey a bit easier than those before you. Today's guests are Joanie Lustig, Lead Physician Recruitment Sourcer, and Becca Petry, Physician Recruitment Sourcer with Baptist Health. So let's start by talking a bit about what it is that you two do exactly and what all that involves. Joanie and Becca, I really appreciate you being here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Charley.
Yeah. So Joanie, you wanna kick it off and talk about a little bit about what you do every day? And what is a sourcer for those who don't know?
Sure, well, I can start with that. So the sourcers are the part of the physician recruitment team that actually find the candidates to fit the job opportunities that we have in our system. We like to call ourselves matchmakers. We work with all the physicians out there looking for opportunities, and we work with databases and any way that you want to share your information, and we seek those people out to match the opportunities that we have all throughout our system. And for us, Baptist Health is the state of Kentucky and Southern Indiana.
Okay. And Becca, how's your day-to-day look?
So as sourcers, we're sort of like the welcome gate, if you will, in recruitment. Joanie and I both work for a whole system. So when you connect with us, we're able to talk through all of our practice opportunities within our system as a whole and help you narrow down where you want to be. So day to day, I'm talking with residents and physicians and trying to find the right spot for them within our system.
That sounds great. So perfect for our listening audience today. On today's episode, what I'd like to do is talk about some of PracticeLink's first practice guide for residents and fellows, if you would like. And that's a 10-step process that we talk about quite a bit, but you might be able to offer some great insights for anyone out there who's applying for a job. Step one would be starting the job search. One of the main questions I get asked when I'm talking to or presenting to residents is, how do I start? I don't even know how to start the job search. It's very overwhelming. A lot of residents tell me they're Googling places. So let's talk a little bit about that. What would you recommend with starting the job search?
We recommend starting when you're in your residency, 18 to 24 months before completing training. First, number one is networking, talking to your colleagues, talking to your program director, finding out where previous residents or fellows have chosen to work and if they're satisfied where they are working. It's never too early to develop relationships with systems or healthcare providers that you have an interest in potentially seeing yourself in the future. So we have lots of opportunities with our system to engage during your training. We have events for residents. If those are offered in your communities, that's a great opportunity to interact with future employers. We also attend conferences. We attend career fairs. All these are great opportunities to start investigating and actually determining, what's out there. But word of mouth is number one. So start talking to people, start dialogue, ask questions, and then we'll get into further discussion about set your criteria up front, what you're looking for. Start, narrowing things down about what your ideal future career looks like for you.
Yeah, that sounds great. I think one great resource we can offer through PracticeLink is our career fairs. We have online career fairs very regularly. Those are great to attend, to get to work with recruiters a little bit and get a feel for how all of that works. And it is great networking. Something else I would throw in there is, if you are a medical student, networking, it's never too early to start going to conferences. The earlier, the better. You never know who you're going to meet or who you're going to run into at these conferences. So I know that sometimes they're not so affordable. Maybe you're on a time crunch, but if you can afford them, make them happen. There's nothing like going to a conference and meeting people, talking to people, sitting in on presentations. Just a great way to network.
I couldn't agree more. I think just starting to explore opportunities that are around you and learning about where your peers and colleagues are at, utilizing your resources like PracticeLink is a great place to start, and getting familiar with job boards and narrowing down your preferences is a perfect starting point. Also, starting to understand what incentives might be available to you. Starting your search early could help you find more money within an organization. Not that that's the main priority in your practice, but if you know you're willing to make a commitment to an organization because it resonates with you, we want to make sure you're taking advantage of everything you can when you're getting your practice opportunity settled.
Right. And what about, let me ask you this. A lot of residents are shocked when I say you need to be looking 18 to 24 months before you finish up. What words of advice would you give those folks, and why they need to start looking so early?
I would say they are exactly on track for their timeline. Like 18 to 24 months is perfect. I mean, at our organization, we are able to do a training stipend for fellows and residents up to $3,000 a month for up to 24 months while they're still in training. For example, we meet physicians at match day and they know they want to come back to their hometown. We have practice opportunities for them. So for people who know where they want to be and know organizations they want to practice with, they're able to start collecting those stipends. Also, you really need to take your time to do your research to find an organization that is where you want to be. This is the first time in your medical career that you get to choose where you want to be, and you want to make a very highly informed decision. You spend so much time at work, you want to make sure your organization is exactly where you want to be.
And I'd say the other thing to take into consideration is, especially if you're moving to a new state, credentialing takes quite a while. It can take, anywhere from 90 days to, 4 or 5 months, 6 months potentially. You want to make sure that you've allowed time for that you can actually start working when you anticipate wanting to start work, and that you've completed everything necessary to do that. So keep that in mind. So the earlier you decide on your position, the earlier all that can be started as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think there's no set standard across the board for the time it takes to be credentialed. So it does take quite a while. So just be prepared for that. How about, let's talk about step 2 would be writing your CV. What are your hints and tips, things that you could suggest? I know you guys see a lot of CVs come through. Let's talk about that a little bit, if you would.
Limit it to at least 3 pages. If not, if you can get it down to 1 or 2, that's better, because as recruiters, we see millions of resumes throughout the week. And if it's too long, we're not even going to look past page 2 or 3. Definitely, unless you're applying for academic roles, I would keep that limit in mind. Make sure you are putting relevant information that's necessary for us to see. So such as your education, your board certifications, your specialty, your experience. You definitely want to address any gaps in chronological time order that would stand out on a resume. So make sure you can explain that in an interview if for some reason you haven't addressed it on your CV, but if possible, address that. And any publications you might have, professional memberships, awards. And it's always great to put some personal information if it's, not too much, but something that shows just you have a life outside of your medical career as well. That's always interesting to see and talk about with recruiters.
Definitely. I think you've got it pretty well covered, Joanie, but when I look at a CV, I love to see your interests, activities. It gives us an opportunity to let you know if those are available in the area. We love to see if you're like an Eagle Scout or swimming, you like swimming or pickleball. We can coordinate how we can incorporate those interests for you in our community if they're available. So it just sort of helps you get to know the area you're discussing with the organization.
Yeah, that's great. I think the only other things I would throw in there is making sure to leave off anything that could be considered controversial or cause bias. I'm not fond of a photo on a CV, and probably half of the CVs I get have photos on them. That's just me personally. I think photos should be left off. Things like member of a political party, I don't really want to see that on a CV. Again, that might cause bias. The other things would just be maybe using the word sabbatical. If you do have a gap, that's okay to use that word. Things to include would be make sure to include your contact info, your objective, education, academic honors, internships, residencies, fellowships. Volunteer experience always stands out to me. That's something I always look at. And we were talking earlier, and Becca mentioned something like the example of being an Eagle Scout. That's a great thing to see on a CV. It does make me perk up a little bit because you know that person is dedicated, and that's not something that's earned overnight. That's a long-term goal. Not a lot of people achieve that. So something like that is always fun to see on a CV for me.
Also, if you do have ties to an area that you're looking to possibly relocate to when you finish training, you might want to put some reference to that. I know we don't suggest going back as far as high school, but if there's some way to indicate, if you're from the Louisville area, let's say you were participated in some outstanding event in Louisville in the past, something to that we can tie you back to there. So that'll be a good discussion point as well.
Yeah, that's great. What's the longest CVs that you've gotten?
I think we have seen high school on some CVs. So as much as you're proud of your experience working at McDonald's, I'm not sure that's relevant when you're submitting your applications for jobs as a doctor.
I see it quite a bit, yes. What about pages, number of pages? How many pages have you seen as maybe the longest CV you've gotten?
I think I've seen 15 pages, mostly publications that they were included in. Yeah, it was a short novel.
Definitely you should be proud of your publications, but maybe that's, you can keep that as a separate list and share that in the future if your initial interviews go well.
My favorite length is 2 pages. I love to see a 2-page resume, and with all the very relevant information at the top. This is my favorite way to see a resume: your contact information, your training, your board eligibility, your board certification. That's really what I'm looking for front and center on a resume.
Sure. And to tie back a little bit about starting your search and attending conferences, if you do attend conferences, maybe try doing a poster presentation or a presentation of some sort. If you're short on your CV, you might be able to get additional things for your CV by presenting at a conference or doing a poster presentation. So keep that in mind as well.
That's a great idea. I've also been very impressed when people are at conferences, attending conferences, and they have a copy of their resume.
Yes.
That's being very proactive and showing, your interest.
At PracticeLink, we know the road to your first practice can be challenging. That's why we created the First Practice Fund. PracticeLink's First Practice Fund is our biannual scholarship program supporting future healthcare leaders in 6 key categories, from medical students to rural medicine providers. Applications for the next round open soon. Tell us your story and we'll help you take the next step. Visit PracticeLink.com for more information.
So one last question on the CVs. How do you feel when you get a CV that is in a completely different font or that may be on a different color background or things like that? People who try to give it a little bit of flair. What's your thoughts on that?
I think keep it simple and to the point. Different color paper is not appropriate for applying for a medical position. And I think just including the relevant information, like we've said, is the most important. And make sure someone reviews it, because sometimes you don't realize there's typos, but there have been typos on some I've seen, and that turns me off as a recruiter immediately. So do not, I can't stress that enough, have any typos on your resume. Make sure it's accurate. You haven't left on any information that's not accurate, and make sure everything is up to date and you haven't left anything out, because I have had people turn in resumes that they say they're currently in a fellowship, yet there's no indication of a fellowship on their CV. So you want to make sure you include everything you should have included on it.
Sure. And if anyone needs help with their CV, we do have a free CV builder on our website at PracticeLink.com. And we also do free CV reviews. So take advantage of those free resources as you can. So let's talk about getting references a little bit. How about establishing your references? What do you have to say on that?
Having good references is critical going through the recruitment process. We want to see your attending as your reference, your program director. Please do not send friends or co-fellows as primary references, because we want to see who's taught and seen you grow and can speak to your abilities as a physician. And that's what our physicians and leadership are looking for primarily.
Yes. And I would say reluctance to share a program director is kind of a red flag for us. So if you're training under someone, they should be able to speak to your abilities, your future potential, and also make sure they're prepared. You might want to make sure you tell them in advance, I've applied for a job at such and such system. You should be getting a request for a reference soon. So that way, the more you can expedite the process and they can respond when requested for a reference, the better it is reflection on you.
That's great. Yeah, great advice for sure. Some things to keep in mind here would be just remember if you're asking someone like a CEO or a high level person, make sure that they will be easy to reach. Sometimes you may get lost in a shuffle there. So make sure it's someone that is aware and will be easy to get in contact with when someone reaches out to them. I think the other thing would be, again, time frame, making sure you have requested your letters at least 6 weeks before you anticipate needing them. I think that's very important.
I think also just like ensuring you prepare your references, like see what they're going to say, sort of like what you're saying, Charlie. That's really important. I think PracticeLink also encourages you to have a cheat sheet about you.
Yeah, that's always my tip is it's okay to provide your reference with a cheat sheet. Sometimes you may be working with someone for just a little while, but they don't know everything about you. So it's okay to give them a little bit of information to let them know a little more about you. The other thing would be asking your reference up front. Are there any areas of concern or shortcomings that you would discuss? Will you share those with me now? And if they have areas of concern or shortcomings that they tell you up front, you probably don't want to use them as a reference, which is logical, but everyone always second guesses, I think, and they worry a little bit, I don't know if my references are, I think they're going to be good. I don't know, but it's okay to approach those people and say, what would you say I'm not strong in? And then you're kind of aware up front of what they might say as a reference, so you can decide whether or not you're going to use them.
And I think, Charlie, you've talked about a tip that ask people in the class ahead of you who've had good letters of reference. And if they've had good success with people, you might want to use the same references as well.
Yeah, that's so true. I think sometimes people forget about once the class ahead of you is gone, I think people tend to forget them, but they are such a great resource. And asking them who wrote good letters is key. I think that's very important to remember that. How many references do you guys recommend? So it used to be a standard of 3. Now I'm hearing most places want a standard of 5. So what's your suggestion there?
That's an excellent question, because as sourcers, we actually, once you have a successful initial interview, we introduce you to our recruiters. And the recruiters then are responsible for taking you from there and arranging for site visits, and that leads to requests for references. So just from our experience, we've heard 3, but we don't know exactly. We'll defer to you, Charlie, on that one.
Okay. I always say 5. I think 5 is becoming more normal. It's always been 3, but now I'm hearing more leaning towards 5.
I think providing 5 gives people the opportunity to not answer the phone. If like, for some reason one doesn't answer, they have others they can get. And so it gives more opportunities for people to speak very highly of you.
Yeah. I mean, that's true. And I think that it also gives you a little wider breadth of specialties or specialists or people in various roles to be part of your reference experience. So you can have a variety of people on there. So we'll go with 5. We'll go with 5. That's what we'll say.
Yes.
So I think step 4 is being true to yourself. And in my opinion, I think this is the most overlooked and underrated on the list, but it's the most important. I think this is what makes or breaks whether you're going to be in a position for long term. This would be defining your goals and priorities and identifying your ideal environment. What do you have to add to that, Joanie?
I would say you really need to dig deep and determine what's important to you. What's important to your family, what type of practice do you want, where do you want to live? I think those are kind of the top questions you need to ask yourself. And don't start out by ruling anything up. But start out by being picky. Keep an open mind, but identify those initial criteria and then kind of drill down what the opportunities are out there and what parameters you can live with. And what's important? Is it work-life balance that's super important to you? Is it, your partner, your future partners that are important to you? Is it the system's reputation that's important to you? So you kind of need to do some, soul searching and whatever triggers you as crucial identifiers or what you need to kind of look at.
Yeah, I think absolutely. And it's not a one-person decision. If you have family input is very important here. I would stress for sure to be picky. This is your chance. This is your chance to say, nope, I don't want that. I don't want that. I don't want that. This is exactly what I want. And start there. And if that doesn't work out, everything else is still there. Everything outside of that criteria, that pickiness that you're looking for, is still there. So you can open up the gates to that later on if you need to, but you've worked hard to get where you are. It's okay to be picky at this point.
Definitely. Yeah, I think understanding what are your short, medium, and long-term goals, and you need to find a space that's going to allow you and your family to achieve those goals, and taking the time to think about your future. You spend so much time in medicine and training, and now you're going to go out and live your life as a physician. You need to figure out what's going to give your life meaning within a system of medicine and outside of your system of medicine. When we recruit physicians at Baptist, I say, you're a physician, but you're a human first. This is your job, and it's going to take up a great deal of your life. You also need to be able to live your life with good work-life balance. If that's important to you, you need to be able to be a human within this space as well.
That's great advice, I think. Anything else on that before we move on to the next step?
I think just being true to your beliefs and values, make sure you're willing to compromise anything that you're not comfortable with. Make a list when you start. See what is important to you if we were writing down, virtues of your ideal future job, and see if you can't match those with the opportunities that are out there.
Hello, my name is Sarah Eichinger. When I applied for First Practice Fund Scholarship, I never imagined how much it would impact my journey as a physician. The $2,500 award helped me focus on what truly matters, which is caring for patients and serving my community. If you're a current medical student, resident, or advanced practice provider with a passion for making a difference, this is the opportunity for you. Applications for the second round of First Practice Fund scholarships are opening soon. Visit PracticeLink.com today to learn more.
Okay, so step 5 would be reaching out to employers. You guys will have a lot of input on this, I think. So you'll start actively searching for jobs and writing your cover letters if applicable. And this is where we recommend going on to PracticeLink.com and actually registering, where you can create your free account and put in whatever criteria it is you're looking for. We can help you with kind of drilling down to specifics. We can weed out things like visa sponsorship. We can take out facilities that don't sponsor. You can search by geographic location. You can search by healthcare facility. There's a lot of options for making the job search more narrowed down to suit you. So let's talk about this a little bit. Reaching out to employers. What do you have to say on this?
Well, first of all, we love PracticeLink. So please, when you start your job search, create a profile with PracticeLink, upload your resume. That way we can start interacting with you. Definitely consider connecting with your colleagues and friends and seeing where they've had success. Word of mouth is the best way for you to learn about an organization, especially in a very collegial group.
So I'd say identify your location. If you have a specific location, then you're going to have a limited, number of opportunities in that community. And if you don't have an identified location, then it's more open. Then you have to set other criteria. So if you have a certain specialty, you can look on PracticeLink. You can see where are those jobs in gastroenterology, and then you can compare those jobs. So you can identify differences between opportunities that are out there. And then what I really like about PracticeLink is put on there in your profile specific things that you might be looking for. So if you want to be close to an airport, put that on there, because there's some rural communities out there that are nowhere near airports, and that wouldn't be a good match for you. But put on there also if your spouse, and I know there's an opportunity to fill this in, is also looking for a position, because that's something as recruiters we can help you with. And particularly if there are other physicians, if your spouse or significant other is a physician, we can also let them know if we have opportunities for them as well. So as much information as you can share helps us out find the right opportunity for you.
Great. And then can you talk just a little bit about the difference between a search firm and an in-house recruiter?
Sure. And I'm sure that our residents out there are inundated being approached by recruiters all the time. To share the difference will probably enlighten you a bit about different recruitment approaches. So Becca and I are employed by Baptist Health System. We are salaried employees, and we help find jobs for physicians to help fill all the opportunities in our system. So we want to make sure it's a good fit for the system and for the physicians that are being recruited. Outside firms make their income by placing physicians. So they can be your advocate. They can help you search for opportunities that you're looking for, but they might try to convince you to go to North Dakota versus you really want to be on the East Coast, because they have an opportunity for you to be placed in North Dakota, but not really anything available on the East Coast. But they're working with you. So they get paid. So sometimes they're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, which might not be to your benefit. So just keep that in the back of your head if you are working with a firm for placement, that you want to make sure that you're true to what you're looking for, and they're helping you with that.
Yeah, that's great advice. So the other thing too to note here is that one recruiter may cover quite a large area geographically, whether it be North Dakota and Georgia, right? So they may cover a huge area. So keep that in mind as well. What are your takes on cover letters? I'm still old school. I love a good cover letter. It tells me what I need to know. If it's short enough, but enough to the point, it also sometimes tells me if someone is tied to the area. But I know a lot of recruiters I talk to are not real fond of cover letters. So what are your thoughts on that? And it's fine to be honest. You can be honest. Everybody's going to have a different opinion on this, I think. Cover letters have been around forever, and it's always been the norm. And it's okay if we're moving toward, a future without those. So let me know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I prefer a well-worded email. So rather than a cover letter as an attachment, I would prefer just like a nice email with their resume attached and their availability, just like conveying why they are important, like why they're interested in your organization and what their goals are. So like a condensed version in the email is my preference these days.
That's good to know. Yeah. Okay. What about you, Joanie?
Well, Charlie, I'm a bit old school like you are, and I do like a cover letter, but I agree it should be short and to the point of what you're looking for. Don't make it too long or extensive, but just kind of summarize, what exactly you're looking for and what you can contribute to the organization. And make sure you don't make sure it's accurate, because you don't want to send one cover letter that's been addressed to one organization and forget to change that out to the next one. So make sure if you are sending a cover letter, it's all relevant to that organization.
Yeah, great advice. I have gotten several cover letters that were copied and pasted.
Yes.
And the information wasn't updated. Yeah, so that's definitely something to watch out for. We could probably talk about this all day, but step 6 is prepping for your interviews. Let's talk about some key points there. Something that I always recommend when I'm talking to residents is setting a timeline before you even start your first interview, trying to figure out what your first interview time frame would be and your last interview would be, just because sometimes there are months of interviewing. And if you maybe go on your first interview and you think that it's the right fit, but you keep interviewing, and by the time you finish up and decide that first place is the right fit, it may not work out so well. So trying to have a time frame in mind before you start. So anything you want to add to that, or any interview tips that you want to talk about?
I would highly suggest when you're talking with recruiters that you give them a timeline that you would ideally like to stay in. Because we've had some physicians interview early on, which is great. They're doing their research. But then if you get an offer early on and you're still planning on interviewing for another 6 months, the initial organization is going to think that you're showing disinterest. So be honest and realistic about your time frames.
And then also, if you really felt like the first one you had was a good fit, stay in communication with that organization and let them know kind of your timelines if it shifts. That way they don't think you've just ghosted them. That engagement can be very helpful for both parties.
So let's talk about a phone interview with an employer. What all do you think should be covered in that initial interview?
On our team, as the sourcing team, we're typically your first call, the organization. And so with us, it's a little more casual. We're just getting a feel for like what location within our organization you might be interested in. We're really wanting to know your timeline of when you want to start, what your priorities are in your practice, whether that might be like mentorship, work-life balance, things that are meaningful for you in your practice. Typically, we'll pass you along to our leadership team where they'll go over that's much more formal, typically on a Teams call, a video call.
My advice is be prepared. I'm much more impressed with candidates that know something about the organization. They've done a little research. You really stand out when you can speak to that. Why would you want to join? What's your appeal to this organization? Also, we do a lot of Zoom or Teams interviews. Look professional. Be in a quiet setting. Be engaged. Don't keep fidgeting around and doing other things while you're talking. I've had people interview in cars while they're driving. That's kind of you're distracted. So make sure that you are focusing and smiling, using eye contact, and have a really good, meaningful conversation.
Yes, I totally agree. I think you should always have something there to take notes. Is always good. And one of the key points that we always talk about too is don't burn bridges. It's a very small community. You might think the physician community is rather large, but you'd be amazed at how many people you'll run into at conferences or somewhere down the road. And I think that it is very important not to burn bridges, whether that's lack of response on your part or whatever it may be. Make sure that you follow through. Whether you want the job, whether you don't want the job, just make sure that you do everything completely and don't burn bridges.
You're absolutely correct about that, Charlie, because we've had people turn down jobs in a very nice manner that they've selected something else, and yet they are not happy with their first jobs, and they come back to us and we've actually hired them. So that's definitely great advice, not to burn your bridges. Also, another piece of advice is to, after a call, I'm always impressed when someone sends a quick thank you email. It was nice meeting you, or talking with you today. That just speaks volumes. Just a very simple thing. If you're truly interested in that position, it's going to make a really good impression.
Yes, I think that's so true. And doing your homework is such a simple task these days, because even the two of you, I guarantee I could probably look up and find you on the Baptist website somewhere, your names, maybe your photos, maybe your email address, whatever information I can find. And it takes a minute to do that. So do a little bit of research. It's always good to be prepared.
Yeah. And if you have some good questions ready, that's always good too.
Yes. Yes. And I always think dress the part. If you have to ask, how should I dress for this? You should always go with dress well. I'm not sure that's even a question anybody should ask these days, but I do get that question from residents. How should I dress? What would be the dress code for an initial interview or a virtual interview? And even for the virtual interview, yeah, you might see me from the waist up, but I tell people, dress up, put your shoes on, put your dress socks on, whatever it takes. But I do truly believe that if you dress professional, you feel professional.
I agree. And if you're in scrubs, that's fine as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Time constraints are, yes, definitely something else for a resident, for sure. Or for a physician, yes. So step 7 would be researching your options. And this would be considering each opportunity's practice type, their compensation package, the community. Things you want to ask yourself here are, can you work there? Can you live there? Don't wait for an in-person interview before you start investigating these 2 questions. Again, it's all about research. I think you should know a little bit about the community. Everything is online these days, so it's not that difficult to find out about the community, things like that. And then something that we suggest is recruiters are always a great source of information about the community.
Yes, for sure. So in our organization, if you're coming in for an interview for a site visit, our team has community tours scheduled in there where we gather information about what you're looking for in your community, and we'll take you on a tour and show you all the things, points of interest, and connect you with a realtor and just get you acquainted with the area, because we want you to feel as connected to the community as possible in that short time frame. Because it's not just about the money we can offer you, it's about what the community can give you and your family.
That's great advice, Becca. Also, we often get asked, when's the appropriate time to talk about compensation? And we know that that's important, that residents are coming out with huge student loan debts. It's not offensive to bring up initially. I mean, obviously not your first question. You want to make sure you ask a lot of other questions first. You can end your first conversation asking, can you give a compensation range? That definitely is important. And if it doesn't fall within your criteria, then, it's a position you don't want to consider any further. You want to make sure that you're happy with that as well. So, look at, you can ask about bonuses, relocation assistance, loan assistance. I would ask all that up front and make sure it's, like we said, meeting your requirements.
Yes, that's so true. And to kind of echo what Becca said, it's not always just about compensation. There's a lot. Bonuses, relocation assistance, those things that you mentioned there, Joanie, they can be a huge value. Definitely don't just look at the compensation. Some questions that we always suggest to ask during this time is, what type of turnover has the group experienced? How many hospitals would you be responsible for covering? Why are you recruiting another physician? And again, what's the salary range for this position? It's okay to ask that. So anything you want to add there?
I think that's all good information. And then if you're happy with that, you feel like you see yourself there in the future, then definitely, schedule a site visit. We know that you only have, and recruiters know that you only have limited time for site visits. So we want to make sure it's going to be worth your while and it's going to be worth the system's while for you to come in and make that visit and spend the time with us. And if you do come, we feel it's very important to invite your significant other if there is one, because often they're very involved in the decision-making process as well. So it's super important to keep them as part of the process.
That's great. Yes, absolutely. So let's talk about completing your interviews, keeping in mind that you're going on a fact-finding mission. The hospital or group is taking time to see if you'll be a good fit for their practice, but you should be doing the same thing to make sure that they're a fit for you. something we stress here is make sure you get all your questions answered. Don't leave things hanging if a question comes up and the answer is, well, we'll talk about that later after you sign. Probably not a good thing. You may forget about it, or once it comes up, if you've already signed, it's a little more difficult to negotiate that at that point. So let's talk about that a little bit. Completing your interviews. What do you guys have to say about that?
I think it's critical to make sure you're getting all of your questions answered. This is not a time for you to be timid. You need to get all of the insight you can. And going back to like doing your homework and figuring out how to stay true to yourself, this is where you see if that aligns with your future goals. It's a good idea while you're there on site or throughout the recruitment process to see if this is a job you want. Like, can you see yourself there? Can you see yourself working with these physicians and the support staff? You really want to have that on the back of your mind while you're visiting and interacting with people. And taking a job solely for compensation is the main reason for leaving a job within the first 2 years.
It's so true. Yes. We see that quite a bit on our side of things. So yeah, you have to be able to be happy working and living there for sure, and not just deciding on it because of compensation.
Exactly. And I would say when you go to visit, see how welcome you feel. Are you welcomed by the group? Are they receptive to recruitment, or is leadership kind of pushing this on them? So you want to get a feeling of like, are you going to mesh with this group? And, are you being welcomed by the physicians in the group, the staff in the group, the recruitment team, the leadership team? Just, you want to feel warm and fuzzy when you leave there, if that's the position you're going to pursue.
Yes, I totally agree. And I think, again, something that comes into play here that people often forget is it's okay to reach out to the class ahead of you and ask them questions about this. They know better than anyone. They just went through it. So again, if you have those resources for the class ahead of you, if you have folks that you bonded with, reach out to them and pick their brain as well. And I think it's key to pay attention to instinct at this point. If anything seems off, make a note of it. There's a reason that it may seem off to you, or, on the same token, if everything seems perfect, it's okay to take, if this is your first one and you think, yep, this is for me, sometimes that's okay too. The other thing to keep in mind, and I say this throughout every podcast just about, but don't burn bridges. This is another key point, that it's a small community and you just never know who knows who within the community. So don't burn bridges. So let's talk about evaluating your offers. This is the fun part. So Joanie, what do you have to say about evaluating offers?
Okay, here's my biggest piece of advice. Make sure you're comparing apples to apples when you get offers. So you might be getting a huge sign-on bonus at one location and a smaller one at another location, but your income potential at the second location is much better long-term versus that other one that has the big sign-on bonus. It looks very attractive coming straight out of training. But then what's going to happen 3, 4, 5 years down the road? What's your compensation going to look like at that point? So just make sure that you're really doing your research about the compensation models and how they compare, and the future, if you have future goals too as well, like if you have potential, looking for leadership potential, what are some other things down the road that you're looking for? Are those going to be there down the road in your future career?
I think in this instance, it's really important to be communicating with the recruitment team and understanding your timeline compared to their timeline. Like, how long do you have to respond to an offer? And just also reiterating that, the offer isn't just the money, it's the place, the community, the organization, family, your activities. You have to take that into account with this offer, making sure this opportunity is the best fit for you as a whole.
Sure. I think some of the other things that I would throw in there are maybe asking things like, what's the current real estate market like there? And how do extracurricular offerings in schools match up with you and your family? Little things like that about community. Tie some community questions in here.
I have one One more tip is never hesitate to negotiate. I mean, it can never hurt to ask for something. Whether an organization is going to be amenable to it or not is a different story. But if you don't ask, you'll never know. So if, maybe they don't offer relocation allowance, but maybe you ask for it and they'll consider it.
Right. And that's the time to do it right there. Yeah. So last step would be negotiating your contract. So we do partner with a group called Resolve, and you can find a link to them on our website. Negotiating a contract is never easy. Something we always recommend here is really, again, reaching out to the class in front of you. If you don't have an attorney, you don't even know where to start, reaching out to your buddy that finished the year before you and asking what they did, that's fine to do that. But making sure you have an attorney in mind, you might want to call them at the beginning of all this process and just let them know what you're going to be doing and that you may be reaching out to them at a certain time frame just to have them available. You don't really want to wait till the last minute to have an attorney available to look at your contract. That's one piece of advice there. What do you guys have to say about this?
Also, kind of pinging off the attorney, you want to make sure your attorney has experience with physician contract. You don't want to just use your random uncle or something. You want to have somebody who knows what these contracts are. Like,
sure.
I don't know if you want like a maritime attorney reviewing your contract.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with Becca there, because we've had some moms or dads be acting as attorneys, which is not advisable. As much as they're, I'm sure, advocating for you, having an experienced healthcare attorney is probably your best advice.
Yeah, and there are numerous ones out there that are seasoned in this, and this is all they do. So yeah, great advice there for sure. Being aware, again, we talked about this earlier, but state licensure, hospital credentialing, all of that, it's not a quick task. It's not something that's a set time frame. Every facility is going to be different on the timing on this, so it could take quite a bit of time. So we suggest allowing 6 months from the time you sign your employment agreement to the time you start seeing patients. Do you guys agree with that, or is that a little too much?
I mean, we've had physicians sign 2 years out, because when they sign with us, they can start collecting their training stipend. But I think at a minimum 6 months is a really good timeline.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. And that way you have the last 6 months of your training to prepare for your boards, start the licensing process, the credentialing process, do your house hunting if needed. And also I would recommend giving yourself a little break after you finish your training. You're going to potentially have to take your boards after training. Some programs do. So allow that time to just focus on that before starting up work immediately. Hopefully you'll get a starting bonus or sign-on bonus that you can use to bridge that gap and just rest up. You've been on a long journey. You've made it. So, celebrate. You have that first job lined up. Put a reasonable start date there.
Sure. Yeah.
Yes, I love seeing a physician say they're going to start in like August or September and they're like going on a vacation. Like, treat yourself, celebrate the transition.
So do you see many folks who don't have an attorney, or do you ever see that?
So that's really more of our contracting team, but we are familiar with residents utilizing an attorney, but that's sort of past our step in the process often.
Okay. So, we definitely recommend that. I don't know, how many folks out there might try to take that on themselves, but I think that's quite a thing to take on for sure.
And Charley, I know a lot of states are not adhering to non-competes these days, but it still is probably in some contracts. So that's something you really want to look out for if you're settling, especially in a smaller city where if you have a non-compete and it says you can't practice within a 50 or 25 mile radius, that's going to limit your ability to stay in that community if you wanted to be there long term. So that's particularly a legal issue that needs to be addressed.
That's, very good point. We didn't even talk about non-competes, so we may have to have you guys back on the show and do another episode. I think we could probably talk forever. Is there anything, as we kind of wrap this up, is there anything else you would like to add to any of our listeners, anything you want to throw out there for Baptist Health, just whatever you want to say.
I know that Joanie and I are both very happy to be a resource for you as you navigate your next step in your journey in medicine to your career. Even if you're not interested in Baptist, we'd like to help you. If you have any questions, this is a huge adventure you are on, and it's the next step in your process, and we just want it to be the best for you. We want you to find exactly where you want to be and practice the way you want to practice.
Agreed. You've worked so hard to get to this point, and we're happy to be that resource for you. Happy to share information about Baptist Health. We have numerous open positions in all different specialties across the state. And another thing is, I know we hope that you refer colleagues to PracticeLink. And if you were to sign with Baptist Health in the future, we have a referral bonus for our physicians. So anybody employed by Baptist who brings on a friend or a colleague may be eligible for a bonus. So we're happy to entertain that too if you're ever part of Baptist. But no, congrats to everybody out there, and you should be very proud of yourselves and excited about reaching this point in your long journey.
Yeah, that's great. That's so true. And I appreciate you both being on the podcast today. On behalf of myself and PracticeLink, we want to thank Becca and Joanie from Baptist Health for being our guests on the podcast. For our listeners, please feel free to reach out with any questions or feedback about anything we covered today by emailing me. You can find my contact information on our website, PracticeLink.com. If you wish to receive more information about PracticeLink, just visit our website. You can give us a call. We have lots of people who would love to talk to you. My name is Charley Lowry, and we thank you for listening to today's episode.